Hey everyone. Can you believe it's already been a year? My daughter's favorite phrase right now has been, oh my heavens. And I feel like that's all I want to say. I can't believe that we have done 52 guest episodes covering the gambit of topics related to shame. And I've had 25 solo episodes that I put out that took you on a deeper dive of concepts, skills, and next steps in your shame resilience journey. And in all of this, our community has continued to grow and the impact rippling over time. Now, before we launch into our second year, I thought it would be good to just take a second to be in a place of gratitude and reflection with all of you. First off, I just want to thank you. I could not have done this without your support. And I know people say this all the time, and sometimes they mean it, sometimes they don't. I mean, whatever. The reality is, I genuinely know this would not have been possible without you. Whether you're a listener, a previous guest, an upcoming guest, both, it takes a community to make something like a podcast have an effect in the world. There's just so much information out there. We are in this constant place of input overload. So the fact that you found and you have supported this podcast means the world to me. It's also not lost on me that with all of that input overload, our time is finite. And I think it is such a gift when somebody gives you their time, especially for many of you that maybe we've never met in real life. And you have given me the gift of your time listening to these episodes, talking about the podcast, sharing these episodes with other people. I started this podcast to give people another avenue to explore that deep-seated problem of shame. Understanding what it is, the effect that it has on us, and what it looks like to show up authentically and immerse ourselves fully in our lives by embracing the process of shame resilience. And together, by building this community, by creating this ripple, we are doing that. I'm so grateful to all of you, and I'm beyond excited to be starting year 2. Now, I just want to switch gears a little bit and reflect, because with anything new, of course, we learn a lot and we need to honor not only the missteps and the wrong turns and our evolutions, but also our wins. So first, gosh, there were some really big wins. From my own breakthroughs to the opportunities to connect listeners with some amazing professionals and my own witnessing of people's growth to giving people their first chance to speak in a public setting like this, we've all taken steps forward in our shame resilience journey. It is a slow ripple, and I am not going to lie. The pressure is always so high when you set out to create something new. You should have X listeners, Y downloads, and Z followers. You need to rank in some arbitrary percent of listenership to be worthy. And if you aren't careful, it's easy to allow these subjective rules and ideas to define you and the work that you're putting out there. But guess what? Whether one person listened to this podcast or a million people, change is change. Connection and community aren't about being the hot ticket that everyone is chasing down, but about being something consistent and real that people can count on. We don't need more quick fixes. We don't need more highlight reels or people that are just making it into the spotlight and everybody jumps on board until they fall back into a shadow. We are talking about real, meaningful, sustainable change. And again, that is a slow ripple and something I'm excited to watch continue to build with all of you. Now, as we've done all this, I have learned so much. For example, Adobe Audition, hardest and most powerful editing tool I've ever used. And I have found that something that after I figured it out takes about 5 minutes to fix, takes me at least an hour of time. And boy, has that been good for me. Learning to embrace the process of making content is a gift because I definitely am that shame person or that shame-based person that struggled with the idea that productivity was marked by my time efficiency. So moving fast and staying ahead. And I confused sometimes that efficient and productive are not always the most important things. I also really shifted my focus on how I talked about audio, not only in my own recording, and I did a whole episode on that where I had a ton of shame coming up because I started this podcast. I recorded in a few different platforms. I had different microphones. I wasn't totally sure how to do it. And so I struggled and I had to make a lot of changes. And my shame brain told me, well, all these don't count because your audio sucks. And I had to work through that. I also got really comfortable talking to other people about their audio to make sure that guests were able to test out their sound, felt really comfortable about setting up their audio and put themselves in places and spaces where we didn't have a ton of outside noise. Now, the biggest thing for me was that I needed to learn to protect my time on the back end. So again, that efficient and productivity piece, it wasn't that I needed to get through editing fast. It was how can I make that process of editing as streamlined as possible? So by getting comfortable telling someone, hey, I see you have AirPods, those are not a great fit. Or if you've got those wired mic AirPods and you've got facial hair or jewelry that keeps touching it, I'm going to have to spend 6 hours on the back end cleaning up your audio. Or I know it might be hot. I need you to close your window because all I can hear right now is birds. And by getting comfortable with that and realizing that what I'm doing wasn't about shaming my guest, but about supporting our collaborative process and goal of putting together an episode, I was able to really lean into that. Now, in that same vein, I found my voice in saying no to people that didn't feel like the right fit for the podcast. Now, sometimes it was a topic issue. Other times it was that the potential guest was more interested in promoting themselves rather than having a conversation. But I learned to trust that, one, I have to protect the integrity of the show and the depth and quality of the episodes. And two, saying no to someone doesn't mean that I'm rejecting them as a person or the value in their story, their skills, their knowledge. I'm simply saying that their story, the topic is just not the right fit for this podcast. And if you want to talk about shame, the idea of someone feeling rejected kicks up every level of my own. Now, while those things were hard, I would say my biggest learning moment was about having tough conversations with the people and the topics that lied more in the middle. People that I thought could be a great guest on the show, but maybe hadn't yet found their voice, hadn't spoken in this context before. Maybe this was their first time sharing their story out loud. So helping somebody hone their craft of speaking or get to the point or the depth of their topic in a way that we could meaningfully talk about it was both scary and empowering. Because what I had to realize is that this is also a platform to mentor new voices, to bring people on that maybe aren't the ones that have guested on 100 plus podcasts or have that TEDx resume or all of those other pieces. Because what we know is that everybody has a voice that deserves to be heard. And in doing that, I had to learn that that was then my responsibility to those guests to show up authentically and to be honest with them in a way that I could really support them in creating the most magical episode possible. Now, as we go into year 2, I can promise you that topics are going to continue to deepen. I'm going to continue to explore new intersection points of shame and all of those different nuances of its impact and the process of building resilience within that. Now, in all of this, I want to hear from you. Again, remember, I can't do this without you. So tell me, what were your favorite episodes? What episodes didn't land? What and who do you want to see back on the show? Or what new faces do you think would be a good fit? And honestly, most important of all, what are the topic areas that you need to see covered to help you in your shame resilience journey? Now, if you have other ideas or ways that you want to see the show evolve, either this year or just over time, or if you want me to try out different ideas, let me know that as well. Now, one thing I am going to be adding for the upcoming year is a monthly summary that just showcases the 2 to 3 key points that I'm taking from each episode over that month. Some reflection of maybe my own shame resilience journey and how that connects to those episodes, and my focus in the coming months. Now, I've also been asked if I'm going to add in video. And while I know that there has been this move towards video podcasts, I'm going to politely decline the pressure to do so for 2 main reasons. First and foremost is that we are all in this state of input overload. We have a constant stream of stimulus coming in, particularly visually. And one of the things we can do to combat and protect against burnout is to minimize inputs and give our eyes a break. The second point is more a technical issue in that I encourage really deep conversation and flow in the episodes. And sometimes there are pieces that guests decide to change or cut out from the conversation. This is much easier to manage and protect in the audio-only formats. And I guess as I'm saying this, there's also kind of a bonus point that's coming up, which is that not everyone is comfortable being on camera. Now, while I love it, I'm super comfortable there, hence my YouTube channel, loving to public speak, the idea that you're being recorded for viewing purposes can absolutely have an effect on how we show up and the depth of the conversation we can have. And while I do think that there's some beauty in being able to watch people and you can connect in different ways, I'm not willing to sacrifice quality or depth to move forward with a trend. And now this is one of those examples that's super hard because, again, that pressure to have a certain number of followers, to do all the things, to be seen, to be noticed. The number of people that have asked me if I can just start pushing clips on Instagram or put some of this up on TikTok and this promotion of this idea that we'd be more successful. I can understand that those things might be true. I know that in my value system, making this decision about keeping the podcast audio only is really important to me. I know its effect on our mental health when we don't have those breaks on our eyes. And I know the effect on the safety and security that my guests have when they know that we can have this dialogue and they don't need to be worried about how they present or look or what happens to move across their screen as we're talking. Okay, I think that covers everything. So I just want to come full circle again by saying thank you. I have so much love in my heart for all of you. And I please want to encourage and ask for your feedback. Tell me what you want to hear. Tell me about what you liked and didn't like. Tell me about all of your ideas and the topics that we want to make sure are here. And while you are thinking about what you want to see and you're moving down into the comments, I also want to encourage you to think about how you've grown. What has this show given you? How have you evolved and expanded in your insight or action as it relates to shame resilience? And again, put all that down in the comments as well, so that not only can I see and reflect on all of that with you, but we can continue to build that ripple in our community of support in our growth and our commitment to the process. Now, lastly, if you hadn't yet, I would super appreciate it if you left a review, either through that star rating or a written comment about the podcast. I know it's silly, and when you take the time to share the impact something has had on you, it helps both you in your own reflection and process, as well as builds a greater sense of buy-in for potential viewers discovering the show. Thank you again. That is a wrap on the 1-year review. I am so excited to be walking into year 2 with you, and I'll see you at the end of the month for our first monthly wrap-up.